Hello friend, welcome to the Java puzzle. Today in this video we are going to discuss about how we can create a custom annotation validation. So in this video we are going to download this repo and use that custom annotation here. The link will be provided in the description. So let's start. So here I just repo this. My database name is custom validation. I added my SQL and let me show you the pom.xml. Inside the pom.xml we have a data JPA, we have a starter validation, we have a starter web. S2 database we use there, but now I just remove it and I will add here the MySQL dependency. Type in here, just remove it, type in here control space and MySQL connector. Let me run this. Okay, so now just go through this repo. We created one table user with some validation, not empty, column is nullable false, then size, then we added the column email, and which is a not empty, and validation is email. Then for the password there is a max and then the mean. If you are not aware about this validation, how we implement the validation here, so you can go through the video which is given in the description. Okay, so let's see inside the controller. In the user controller we have the add here. Let me change it to register and let me check I'm able to store the data or not. So my server is running here at 8088. Okay, so let me check I'm able to register my API. It will load this user, minimize it. ID we don't need because this will be the auto incremented in the side the header. Let me set the value Java puzzle, then inside the base URL just change it to 8088, apply and OK. Select the Java puzzle. Now in the body let me add the name Java puzzle and email Java puzzle at youtube.com. then password is 7@123. let me send this and it's stored. Okay, now let me check inside the database. Let me refresh this. Inside the table we have a user, select row, we have a data, right? Okay, now let me add one more data, 7 at YouTube, and send this. It is also stored. Let me check. Now we have a 2 data is stored here. Okay, now what is the use cases, or we can use the email ID. Okay, email ID we will check this email ID and password we will pass there, and we will check if this email ID is present or not in our DB via using the custom validation annotation. So for this what I have to do, I have to firstly let me create inside the controller, let me create one API post mapping with login public response entity of user, login user, just return me the string, it is a valid user or not valid user. Okay, then we have to pass, let me create one DTO here. So let me create one package DTO inside the DTO, let me create one class which is a login request. Let me annotate it with data, and here inside it we will use just email and password. So let me create private string email, private string password. Now our DTO is completed. Let's move to the login controller. Here inside the request body we will pass the login request, and here what we have to do, we have to save, we have to check that the username and password is present in our DB or not. So it will just return the data. So string valid user service dot login user and pass the login request, and just return new response entity, and inside it we will just pass the valid user comma http status. Okay, then let me create this method inside the service class, and here we will add our logic. So inside our repository we have to create one method. So let me just check here. It will return the user is equal to user repository dot find by, let me check the user entity. We have a email and we have a password. So find by email and password, and here we will pass the email and password here. So login request dot get email and login request dot get password. Let me create this method inside the repository. Fine. Okay, now what we have to do, just let me merge this and just enter it. Okay, now what we have to do, we have to just return user is not equal to null, then we will return valid user, otherwise we will pass invalid user. So our repository is also done. Now go inside the controller, it's also done. Okay, so where is the error issue? Okay, now it's done. Let me run the program and check is it working fine or not. Our email ID and password is this, so let me try to check. Okay, inside the REST kit, let me refresh this. Okay, now we have a login. Now let me check Java puzzle at youtube.com and password is 7@1234. Let me send this valid user. Okay, let me change the password and let me run this invalid user. Okay, great. Now what we have to do, let me check with another user also. 7. So 7 at YouTube, send it invalid user. Great. Let me change the password, send it, and a valid user. So okay, great. Now we are good to implement our custom annotation validation. So for this, like, what is our use case? Before sending this response, user login response, we will check that this email ID is present in our DB or not. Then we will log in our API. Okay, So let me minimize this. So for this I have to create one annotation. Let me create one in class interface annotation, and the annotation name, let me suppose valid user is my annotation name. So let me create one here, valid user. Now inside the annotation we have a valid user. Let me add some more thing. Inside the controller there is a valid, and here you will see the target, retention, documented. So same thing we will do with our custom annotation. So the first thing, the target, what we are going to target with this annotation, which one is field, parameter, class. Like you will see here inside the valid, you will see this annotation is used for the method, field, constructor, parameter, type case, and in our case we are going to use the parameter. Okay, we don't need anything, we just need a parameter here. So let's close this. So first one is the target, and inside the target we just have to pass a single, because it can be multiple, but we need just a for the parameter, right? Parameter. Then the second thing, we have to provide the retention here, retention type, when it will be run there. So the retention, and inside the retention we have to define there the retention policy. Retention policy, you will see the class, runtime, source. So here we need a runtime here, because we want this annotation at the runtime. So after that we just want to provide the documented, and then we just here we will define that for this annotation where we are going to implement the validator. So that class name we have to define here inside the annotation constraint. So the constraint we have to define here. Firstly we have to tell that validated by, and here we have to provide the validator. So our annotation name is valid user, so we will create valid user validator dot class. Let me create this class. So more action, create a class inside the annotation, and okay, now it's okay. Now inside this what we have to do, we have to provide the three things. First thing, and we can add more abstract method we can add here, but three things is important for this. First one is a public string message, and if you want if you have any confusion how to create what is this component you want to know in the details, just let me know inside the comment section, and I will create a dedicated video on the annotation. But for this you have to just focus on the thing what I am going to do here. So here firstly we just provide the message here, and here we can provide the default here. So let me provide the default here. If you are not provided the default, then whatever you are providing inside the annotation parameter, that will show here. Okay, so default invalid user, and the extra thing we will do when we need here. So thereafter we have to provide the this thing group here, which is a type of class, and here just generic. If you are not aware about the generic, that also you can see inside my video. I provided there one dedicated video on the generic. If you have no idea about the generic, you can go there, and inside the description I also provide the link of that group here. And default, I'm just passing the blank, the array. Okay, the last thing is it should be array of the class. Okay, then last thing is public, and there we have to provide the class and question mark, it should be extends our payload. Okay, and payload is also, and here this would be the class and this would be the payload. Okay, then provide the default blank. That's it. So our valid user annotation is created. Okay, it's showing the error because inside the valid user we have to implement the method which is given here is valid and initialize. So currently for this tutorial we don't need this initialize, we just need a is valid. So just okay, and we override here. Let me see. Now it should be removed incompatible. Here we just provide, okay, we have to provide here which annotation we are going to use here. So the validation annotation name is a valid user and string. That's it. Okay, let me remove this. I will override again, but let me refactor this hue. Looking very strange. Okay, now implement the method is valid and here string value here. Great. So everything is great and this error is also resolved. Okay, so here what we are going to do is whenever this valid user annotation will be run, that time it will be validated by this class valid user validator. So our logic would be inside here. So what we have to do, we have to just provide the condition, our user is valid or not, or email ID, whatever the condition we are going to do here, that we have to provide here. So first thing what we have to do, we have to firstly auto wire our repository where we will get the details of our email ID is present in our database or not, that we will taken from the repository. So firstly auto wire here, and inside it we have to provide private user repository and user repository here. Okay, then what we have to do here, we have to find here the user repository dot find by email, right? And here we have to pass the value, and this should be return the object of optional of user and user is good. Let me import this class. This should be entity, and for the optional also, and create this method inside the repository. Now our find by email is there, and we pass the value. Let me change it to email ID. That's fine. Okay, now the next thing is we have to check here. So we have, because this is a return type is a boolean, so we have to provide this, right? So for this what we have to do, we have to check if value is not is equal to null, and we will check here the user optional. Don't need to use the optional, we just use the user. Okay, then user that is present, then we will return the true, we will return true, otherwise we will return false. Okay, so our annotation is also done. Now what we have to do, we have to just pass inside the controller. We have to provide here the valid, so our custom validator can work. And inside the login request, we have to use the valid user. So inside the valid user annotation, we just pass the message email ID validated value. This will be the value. Whatever will pass inside the email is not present in the DB. Let me run the program and see. Let me open this, and here I'm just passing this. Let me run this. Okay, it shows the error. It giving the not contain a groups. Okay, so inside the valid use groups, it should be groups. Let me run the program. Now let me run this again, and you will see email ID is not present in the DB. Okay, let me check with the real email ID. So that would be, let me check, 7@youtube.com, 7@youtube.com, but my password is incorrect. So let me check invalid user. Now this validation is working fine. Let me check with the password is 7@1234. Send this valid user. Okay, now change this email ID, send this. Now email ID is not present in the DB. So like this you can use your custom validation with the database connectivity, and rest of the validation you can do that. So thank you for seeing this video. If you have any question, just let me know in the comment section. Thank you.